Heyo, welcome everyone to episode 79 of Today in the Scene. I'm Joe with Indie Arcade Wave, and I just want to say thank you for checking us out. If you like what we're doing here at Indie Arcade Wave, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us a ton, and we'll just keep bringing more videos for you. So this week, we're going to bring back a team that we've already spoken to a couple times, and a new member from that team. We're going to bring back the crew from Creaky Lantern Games. They published games such as Street Cleaner, the video game, and Aeternum. I want to welcome Brooks, Jesse, and Nate. How's everybody doing?
Hey, good. Hello again.
Yeah, it's good to have you guys back on. Thanks for jumping on. I know we've been talking about this for a while, Brooks, kind of back and forth. I wanted to chat about this game and dive a little bit more into what publishing indie games was like, I don't know, 10 years ago before Steam, where anybody could just drop their game at any point in time. So we'll just jump in. I'll just have you guys introduce yourselves and just let us know a little bit about you, and we'll just start from there.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Brooks, the lead developer, artist, programmer of Creaky Lantern Games.
I'm Jesse. I'm a music audio dude, amongst a few other things.
I'm Nate. I am primarily responsible for lore, writing, and pretty much anything that has to do with words involving what we do.
I love the clean, concise, short little intros. I guess Creaky Lantern Games. Let's just start there. Let's figure out kind of where you guys came from and how did you all meet?
All right, so I kind of started everything, just growing up, into video games. At some point, decided I'd like to give it a shot and make that my thing. So the first time I really made a go of it was thinking about things back in like 2012, and at that point, for some reason, I was super into shmups. Even though that hadn't been my thing before, I got into it and decided I wanted to make a game, but I wanted to make something a little grander. At that point, it was like a Metroidvania, and I decided, well, that's kind of a big ambitious thing, so I'm going to pare it back and I'm just going to make a shmup. So I started working on that, and at that point, I met this other man, Jesse, here, and told him, yeah, I'm working on games. And he said, yeah, I'd like to get into games. I'm a musician. So we got together and we started working on this project. And that's what turned into Aeternum. Anything you want to add to that?
I mean, around the time that I know Brooks was working on Aeternum, I was basically doing Xbox Live Indie Game reviews. So that's how I met Brooks and Jesse.
Right. So we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really, we can't get into Aeternum properly without understanding the situation of independent game development at that time. In that Steam at that point, this was before anyone could get on Steam. At that point, you had to have an in somehow. You had to know someone that worked there or know someone that knew someone. Or they had just launched the Greenlight program, which was, if you'll recall, a program for submitting video games for a community vote to get Steam to notice you to allow your game on the platform.
That sounds like a process.
It was, yeah. And it's just a popularity contest, right? So whatever was most popular got the most attention and got the most votes and was let on the platform sooner. So we'll get there, but that's how I submitted a tournament onto Steam to begin with. But also at that time, there was this other little program that was starting up, which was, remember, this is back during the heyday of the Xbox 360. And Microsoft started this initiative that they called the Xbox Live Community Games. And Xbox Live Community Games was a thing for independent developers for a small fee of $100 a year for a membership. If you had an Xbox 360, you could sign up and you could make video games and you could self-publish them. Eventually, this became known as Xbox Live Indie Games, XBLIG. And that was where I started developing Aeternum, because I thought it would be fun to develop for a console, because it was something you could easily do and self-publish and get a game on an Xbox. It was actually way easier than getting on Steam at that point.
Yeah, I mean, that seems really cool. Like, I didn't even, back then I wasn't really all that into this stuff, and I wasn't even really thinking about what it took to get a game on there. And I know I came across Castle Crashers, which I'm sure anybody that loves indie games is probably given that game a play. And that one I found on the Xbox 360. It was just, they showcased that game, and it was pretty cool. So you told us a little bit about like kind of the process of getting it on there. Let's talk about where the game started, how you kind of all got into the game, and then we'll talk about like the process of moving it from your creation to the Xbox and compare that to like what it's like nowadays. So where did you guys first start Aeternum? Like, how did you start the game? Who came up with the idea, and who did what?
Yeah, I started it. So, of course, like I said, I was weirdly into shmups at that time. So I got into the Toho Project, and Death Smiles was a big one that I was really into. And that's why I decided I wanted to make a shmup.
I think earlier on, I know that one of the earlier projects that I was working with Brooks on was that Metroidvania that he had mentioned earlier, and a neat thing that he had implemented was like the bullets, I guess you could say, as a platformer. It already kind of had a little bit of a bullet hell vibe to it. And I think that would be like the proto Aeternum, or at least the genesis of what became Aeternum out of there. I still want to do that Metroidvania, but that'll be someday.
And so like you said, XBLIG was the initial target that I wanted, and I was kind of working with another friend on just a little side project of reviewing indie games on the platform, because it's one of those situations where you can kind of be a big fish in a little pond with the XBLIG stuff, where you could make a name for yourself in this little community of up and coming games and game developers. And so that's where I met Nate, because he was running a competing site and we got to talking. And so how was your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I think it's kind of important. Like, I don't want to spend too much time on what Xbox Live Indie Games was necessarily yet, but basically, I think it's important to understand like what I don't want to say unregulated. Can I swear on?
Go for it, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So what a kind of unregulated shit show the indie game scene was on Xbox Live, which was kind of great in a way, but I mean it was like sort of hidden away in the Xbox dashboard. So there's like the Xbox Live Arcade, which most people know, and then there's sort of like the indie games, and then you go in there and everything's $1 or $3 or whatever the Microsoft points, 80 points or whatever that was. But there really wasn't like any professional coverage of it. And just on a whim, I started this site and I found Armless Octopus, two Fedoras, Xbox Live, Indie Gamer Chick started around the same time. So, I mean, there was just sort of this open option to start talking about this thing that nobody was really talking about. And obviously, because there wasn't a whole lot of people, kind of everybody ended up knowing each other, talking to each other. And we just sort of knew each other from doing reviews of these things because somebody's got to cover it, right? And when Brooks and Jesse had already made some progress on that, so I knew there was some music implemented at that point, when he was like, hey, I'm working on this thing. Would you be interested in maybe doing a little bit of play testing? And I don't remember exactly how the conversation started. I remember the analogy I made, which was something along the lines of, I think you need some kind of story, even if it's just something like are you a bad enough dude to what was it? Kidnap the president? Or not kidnap the president. Yeah. Save the president. you a bad enough dude to kidnap the president?
Oh, we're doing that game now.
Yeah, I'm totally for doing a Bad Dudes remake at some point. The greatest
other
video
side.
game story of all time. Yeah.
So
So
with
that
the
is how I
game-
got onto the project.
Yeah, I mean were you running your own like review website at that point in time?
I think we definitely both were.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine Gearfish, which is actually just a total inside joke among me and a few of my friends that started it.
That's how these things always start.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, I like the idea of like how you guys kind of all met within the community and then ended up building something. So it's just like this crazy bullet hell storm, shoot 'em up, school based kind of thing.
Yeah, like a magical girl thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious about the dialogue. Like I know that's what you focused on. Nate was primarily the dialogue. Jesse did the music. Brooks did a lot of the coding and the game and everything. Talk to me about like the character development, because you said like this game is cool but it needs something else. Like where was your inspiration for that, and what direction did you go kind of with the way that they talk to each other?
So
okay, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, Brooks honestly, like he had essentially like a lot of things that were unspoken in the background. He had a concept for the world itself. So in a way, honestly, that's more of a question for him, because I could jump in for how I did the dialogue, but Brooks is probably the one to ask on the actual world creation. He essentially kicked the things off, and then I took it and ran with it.
Yeah, I started developing. I had the main concept for the characters and the universe and everything, and honestly, the goal was to kind of just like make a Toho like at that point. For people who haven't heard of the Toho project, it's a series of bullet hell shoot 'em ups developed by one man in Japan, codenamed Zune, under the under the company name of Team Shanghai Alice, and he's been making these games for decades at this point. Like I think the first couple games are on PC 98, and since then they've become kind of a worldwide phenomenon. Probably one of the most popular shoot 'em up series in the world, and not just because they're really solid bullet hell games, but also because the characters that he's created for these things, who are like across the board just magical girls and demons and all this stuff. But people really latched onto the characters and the universe, and it became a huge thing for like fan art for comic books and eventually videos and fan games and all sorts of stuff. But that's where I started, just kind of mimicking that, making a magical girl universe and setting it in more of a European boarding school situation.
There's also the like, I know before that there was dialogue and much of a story. It was the meeting of two totally different types of magic, I guess you could say. There's like the technological mech side, the cyber, stuff, and then there's the pure magic stuff, and it's almost like a back and forth between the two, like the colliding of two different types of magic and all that stuff.
Yeah, the initial concept was actually kind of based on Ikaruga, which is, if you haven't heard, is also another shmup, a famous shmup by Treasure. That is, the main mechanic is you've got two different colors, and you can flip which color that your ship is, and whichever color you are, you will absorb bullets of that color. So it's a dance of flipping your color to get through patterns, absorb bullets, and that kind of thing. So originally I was going to do a thing where it was magic versus science, and you'd be flipping back and forth. But I've got this thing where I think like, okay, well, that's complicated. I'm just going to make it a little more simple so I can finish this project. But so that's where I made some characters and I started making the game, and I had the setting. And at that point I'm like, well, I'm not a great writer, and it would be better if I could focus on art and programming what I'm doing. And I know Nate wants to be a writer, or is a writer, and wants to get back into writing. So I hit him up with some concept art and stuff, and you can take it from there.
Yeah, and then it was basically like, there's honestly it was essentially, hey, here's kind of what I'm trying to do. Let's put together essentially some kind of simple point A to point B story on this. Like, hey, it's a small project, and I don't remember if you came up with Macy Guffin, but literally just joking about the idea of a MacGuffin to give the simplest possible motivation to get through the game. Hey, my best friend's missing. This is the game's MacGuffin. Her name is literally Macy Guffin.
Yeah.
And then a lot of just tongue-in-cheek writing of like, hey, lines like, hey, I hope I don't have to fight everybody I meet, which of course you do. It's a video game.
That's how you get acquainted. That's how you get introduced.
It's how you make friends.
You fight.
Yeah. It's the basis of like every shonen anime. It's just you fight people and now you're best friends. And from there, I mean, it was essentially, hey, here's a character, here's what the design is, here's sort of a theme, and then the first, I would say, 3 stages or so were kind of set, and then we actually had a lot more fun. I would say, I don't want to say we had a lot more fun. I don't know how much fun Brooks had putting together the patterns and the game finale stuff. But I got him to put in like a couple more things that were implemented off of ideas I know that I had come up with in the course of coming up with other stuff for the school. So it ended up, it's fun. It's just it's how you end up collaborating. It's like, hey, here's an idea. Can you implement this? No, it's a massive pain in the ass. All right, let's do it anyway.
I like that you brought that up because I always kind of thought that, but I've never discussed it with you guys about how if you making Aeternum was almost like a linear thing, like starting at the beginning and then building throughout the whole game. And I feel like the last segments of the game are really where the game gets its stride, both visually and thematically and all that. It's like it all just. And I don't know if that's because that's when we were all like synchronizing and all, we knew where each other stood and what our strengths were and working with that, or if it's just because the game had been structured so well that by the time you get to that point, you're like really like invested. But it was just a neat thing. If you played Aeternum, like by the time you get to the later into the game, I'd say the last third of it is where really everything just takes shape, and especially with the DLC, which is just part of the game now, is just when things really like kind of blew up. So
it was definitely a learning process. I learned a ton about actually getting through development of a game, because Aeternum was the first one I actually finished. Of course, as a developer, you've always got projects that you're working on, but the first one you finish is kind of special because it shows you can do it. You can actually ship something, and that's notable. But yeah, it's like, so I learned so much along the way. We all learned so much together that by the time we hit the end, we'd kind of found out what everything was.
Yeah, you finally hit that stride where you guys were all comfortable. The story was coming together. The mechanics all felt good. That's really interesting that you brought that up, Jesse. And I guess I've kind of asked Brooks and Nate kind of what their part in the game was. And I know that this was pre-Street Cleaner for you, Jesse. What was it? Was this the first game that you worked on audio for? And like, what was that like?
Yeah, I've always been into video game music. Growing up, it's what I listened to. I was the kid that plugged his tape recorder into the headphone jack of the Genesis and went through the BGM select and made my own mixtapes and stuff. And I've always wanted to do game music. So this was, finally a really good opportunity to sink my teeth into it and get in there. And I was ambitious to the point where I didn't want any piece of music to be played twice, like every boss fight had to have its own theme, versus a lot of games where it's the same boss music, which later I found out there's a reason why you do that. But but at the time, it's what I did. But I actually grew up a couple miles away from where Brooks lived at the time, and so I was. It was easy for me to actually go over to Brooks's and be in the room with him and work with him, and he set up a little desk for me, so in his office we were back to back while I was working on music and he was working on what he was working on, and just being able to riff and bounce stuff back and forth was a lot, made things happen a lot more organically and stuff. I mean, I could try things in real time and get his feedback on it, and vice versa, and that was really really awesome. It's in as much as working online, and working over a computer connection and stuff like that, it is works. Being in person for some people, I know for me at least, was a really neat boost to the creative process. But yeah, that's where Street Cleaner came from. Actually, was Brooks and I talking about stuff, and if I remember correctly, I had said that like I wanted to write the soundtrack to a movie, but Brooks was like, well then then do it, and I was like, but I don't have a movie. And Brooks was like, well, do it anyways. So that's Street Cleaner was a one-off for that. It was going to be just one movie called Street Cleaner, and that first album was the soundtrack to the movie. And that's where Street Cleaner came from, was the Aeternum sessions.
And now it's turning into a tour, and you've got a game and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Oh yeah, we got a game.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, just go ahead and mention that. That's the other thing that I was curious about, is the difference. Like, what was the difference of like launching this game on Xbox Live Indie Games and then being able to like create Street Cleaner as your next project and drop that onto Steam and Switch? Like, is it easier now than it was before? Is it kind of the same headache it was before? What's your guys' notices and the differences?
So XBLIG was like dead simple to get into. Like I said, all you had to do was pay $100 for the subscription and own an Xbox 360, and you could get going with a game on the Xbox 360. And it was great for that. And especially because along with XBLIG, Microsoft developed a software system called XNA. So XNA is actually a bundle of game components for building video games that use C# under Visual Studio, and it was all free. You could just go download it, and it was really a fantastic little way to get into developing video games, because one of the main developers of XNA was actually Sean Hargreaves, who previously was one of the main developers of a little a C++ game development engine or series of libraries called Allegro. So he was super famous for that, and went on and put a lot of work into making XNA a really friendly platform for game development. So it's super easy to get into that. Where am I going with this?
Transitioning into Switch.
Right. So it was really easy to submit to XBLIG, and really the only barrier was to just make sure that your game actually ran on it. Because the actual process for releasing on XBLIG involved a peer review system. So in order to get your game actually ready and complete for release, you had to submit it through a peer review process and get, I believe it was 10 OKs from other developers. So there was this whole ecosystem among the developers of getting your game into review and getting other people to review it so it could actually pass. And it was an interesting process. And also, unfortunately, because of the way it was so easy to pass, like your game basically just had to not crash and not have any profanity in it. and you could get it on. But that also meant that you had a lot of weird junk on XBLIG.
Oh, I
Which
like
I think-
I like the
I don't know
laundry
how-
list of ones where you could buy this game with all it does is just vibrate your controller for you.
Yep.
That was a good seller too. You could look at the charts on that one. It was-
Yeah, there was that was kind of what I meant when I said XBLIG had a bit of a shit show. The peer review system was, I think, well intentioned but imperfect, to put it mildly.
There was one I watched Brooks used to live stream on his old blog. He would stream some of these games, like he would play some XBLIG games at random, and there was like an edutainment game, but it had one of the most sinister undertones to it. Like it was almost like an AR thing. Like, is this game trolling me right now? Like, what's going on? Because it's under the guise of a edutainment math type game, but it had this whole eugenics undertone to it about like selective breeding, and it was like, this is not good. This is
It was unintentional, but
it existed.
it was pretty funny when I noticed it. No, the whole point of that game was this was by a little company called 1K Soft. I don't know if they're still doing stuff, but it was just a little well-intentioned edutainment thing where this plane flew over and would drop guys out of the plane, and they had numbers on them, and it would show a math problem on it, 3 + 5 or whatever, and you have to grab the guy that said 8. But it was like, well, he's the only one I'm letting live by grabbing him out of the air. All the others fall to their death. But
It was like the trolley problem version of the game. Like if you were to make that the trolley problem thing where
Yeah.
that but gamified. Like I think we're onto something here actually.
Yeah, I think we're spitballing a new game. I think
Yeah.
you guys have your next project right here, right now.
Yeah, it's gonna be called no, I want never mind.
anyway, so on the other side of it, though, XBLIG and XNA in particular are kind of instrumental, I think. Oh, got a cat.
Nice.
XBLIG and XNA are kind of instrumental in like the modern history and trajectory of indie games. Because I made myself a little list of some of the notable people from the XBLIG days. So like we've got Ben Kane, who made a game called DLC Quest, which was made a huge splash because it really kind of lampooned the idea of DLC. Because this was the time that Horse Armor originated, if you'll remember Horse Armor as a joke.
Horse Armor.
Yeah, where I don't remember what game it was, but
Oblivion.
Yeah, where the big thing that they sold was armor for your horse, and it became a huge laughingstock. But he made a game based on that, and Ben went on to be one of the founding developers from a game jam of a game called Keep Talking Nobody Explodes, which you might recognize. So then we've also got James Silva under Ska Studios, who made a game called I Made a Game with Zombies in It. And the whole point of that was that he wrote this stupid little song about
It was a
how he made a
masterpiece.
game with zombies in it. Yeah. You can, if you look it up, you'll find the song. It's readily out there. And it's just a little twin stick zombie shooter. And he went on to make a game called Dishwasher. And eventually now what he's working on is the Salt and Sanctuary series, which people might recognize as a 2D kind of Soulsborne thing, which is hugely popular.
Mm-hmm.
Got Ian Campbell, who was Boot Disc Revolution, who made a series of games called Bleed 1 and 2, which are little kind of bullet time action matrixy platformer shooter things. And he went on to now he works at Drinkbox Studios, and he worked on Guacamelee 2, and now I believe he's their lead developer or designer. So he's making good stuff. We've got Z-Boyd Games, Bill Steinberg and Robert Boyd, who during XBLAG made, they wanted to get into RPG development, which is notoriously one of the worst things you can do as starting indie dev, because RPGs they seem so simple, but they are ridiculously complex and impossible to finish. But they wanted to do it, and they managed to do it, and made a little game called Cthulhu Saves the World. which is you play Cthulhu, and through some weird happenstance, you meet a bunch of characters and save the world. And they went on to kickstart a game called Cosmic Star Heroine, which is a fairly popular RPG, and they're continuing on their RPGs, so good on them. And XNA, I think, is also really important because it's so easy to get into that, and so good as a game platform that people are still using it, even though it's totally defunct. Like, you can still download it, but Microsoft doesn't support it at all. You have to go through some hoops to or use like modern ports of it to really do stuff with it. But it gave a lot of people their start, and one in particular, Maddie Thorson, who originally made a little indie platformer called Ogmo, and went on to make Towerfall, which didn't come out on XBLIG. That went to the Ouya, which is that's a podcast on itself. But Maddie Thorson went on to helm Celeste, which is probably the most well-known out of everything that I've just talked about. So there's a huge pedigree, I think, with XNA and the people that it brought up and the community that it fostered and where things are now and where they're going.
What are some memorable games that stick out for you, Nate?
From Xbox Live Indie Games?
Yeah.
Boy. Honestly, the first game that made me want to dive into the indie game scene at that point was a game called Aphelion and Aphelion 2, which were basically one-offs on the Xbox Live Indie Game marketplace. As far as I know, I periodically looked for them online just to see if I can find anything else. So they're gone. But they were a couple of, I think, relatively ambitious RPGs for $3 on the Indie Games platform. Scapegoat is another one that I think really deserves mention, which is available on Steam, by the way.
There was
Magical Time Game.
There was a trilogy of twin stick shooters by, I thought it was Mommy's Best Games. I forget exactly what they were called, but they were only on XBLIG. Brooks, do you remember what game it was?
Are you thinking of Radiant Games?
Yes, Radiant Games. Yes.
I was going to say Mommy's Best did Shoot One Up, right?
Yeah, Shoot One Up and Weapon of Choice, and moved on to actually did Serious Sam Double D, which was an interesting one.
Yeah.
It makes sense. They did Explosion Aid, right?
Yeah.
Radiant
Games is something else, yeah.
Okay, my bad. So yeah, those were amazing, like because they were you just jumped right into it, no narrative, like this fun. It was like almost like Super Smash. What was that? Smash TV, but it gave you this way to like level up, and then you get points and you can choose what you want: bombs, defense, shoot faster, that kind of thing. And I was like, man, like I would easily pay $20 to buy this game, like and it was just a buck, $2, $3 on XBLIG.
I believe they are on Steam now too. You can get Radiant Games, their shooters.
You gotta check it out.
Yeah, there's so many. It's honestly one of the saddest things to me that sort of because there, for as much as I kind of touched on like what a shit show, the sort of completely open, no, not completely open, but obviously the low barrier to entry created, it also opened the door for a lot of incredibly fun, very experimental, very interesting games that were genuine gems that, for whatever reason, were, hey, this can't, a handful of people, just similar to what could have happened with Aeternum, which is 3 guys come together, they make something, and then everybody just goes their separate ways. And it never gets released anywhere else. It never goes anywhere else. It just sort of exists in this beautiful form briefly and then vanishes forever. because as far as I know, there's not really any archive for a lot of this stuff. So it's basically just if the developers didn't release it and no one has it saved, oh well. I hope you were there to see it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
how would
and
you
then-
even access that anymore? Like, if you still had the Xbox and you potentially had the game downloaded, would you even be able to play it now?
You actually can, yes.
You can.
You do have to maintain your Microsoft ID to be able to log into your Xbox. I actually dusted mine off a couple months ago because we were showing some stuff off, and I had changed my password on my Microsoft account, and I was trying to log back in and discovered that in order to play my game, I would have to log back into my account on the Xbox 360, and discovered I could not put my password in because it was too long for the, the field on the Xbox. So
I
had to
saved the
change my
day though.
Yeah.
I was able to swoop in and we were able to get the game going on through my account because I had the game, obviously. We showed it off. We brought Aeternum to Brew Game Plus. I think it was Brew Game Plus 4, which was last fall in Vista, California, and we set up Aeternum in the Xbox, and we had it all going, and it was really neat. A dude came and just sat down and played the game for a while. And next thing I know, he beat it, and I was like, no way. Like Brooks had to it was pretty cool.
Yeah, final boss took him a few tries, but he got through it.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Like this dude, I'd never met him before, and he was the saxophone player in one of the bands. Yeah. So now on my
little
Xbox,
did you
it
know
says
he's
Joe.
a pro at the game and he's beaten it multiple times.
Right.
Well, I can say, by the way, because I know we have gotten playtesting feedback, I would say both on Aeternum and Street Cleaner, that they're both old school difficult, but they are very beatable. I stream on Twitch, and as the small community goes, I had essentially who's now a friend of mine, basically be introduced to the games, download them, and finished both Aeternum and Street Cleaner in one sitting.
That's
So
dedication.
they are totally doable.
Yeah,
Yeah, you gotta love the classic hard games. I mean, you're so right. Like playing Street Cleaner, it feels like you're playing like an old NES, Super Nintendo vibe game where like you can get in, the first couple levels are easy, and then you're like, damn, okay, I gotta lock it in.
Yeah. Hopefully,
I have fallen down the sewer trap.
Yeah.
Hopefully, by the time you get to the second stage boss, you then you feel the heat. Like, oh, okay, wait, I'm dying now. But there's no penalty for failure, and even the worst spot in the game to die doesn't set you back that far. It's there's we didn't Ninja Gaiden it to where when you die you have to start at that stage all over again, kind of thing. Or if you need to continue, you have to go back to that beginning of that act or anything. So and so it does have that NES level of difficulty to it, but because there's no penalty for failure, you die, you just jump right back in where you were, and but now you have full health and full bullets, kind of thing. And I'm actually watching streamers early on, when there was a little bit of a race to get the speedrun record, watching people jump in and like intentionally die in certain spots just so that they could respawn with more health, and I thought that was really something that I had never thought of.
The quick reload.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's a lot of the stuff that I had to ask you guys. I guess you guys can shout out like social medias, where they can find you, where people can follow your journey, and if there's any other news you feel like laying out there for the people, you can let them know.
I'm going to go first. Street-cleaner.com. I have a music project called Street Cleaner. I'm going on tour, USA tour. I'm hitting 20-something cities, starting in about 3 months from now in May 12th is the first show, and then June 18th is the last, and doing a big loop throughout there. I would love, we built a Street Cleaner, the video game arcade cabinet. I would love to bring that with me, but logistically that's not happening. But
you should at least bring it to Minneapolis.
I'll just pack it up. I'll ship it over. I'll send it to your address. That's where you'll find me specifically, but more importantly, we're always on the Creaky Lanterns Discord. That's where I am 24/7. If I'm at my computer or looking at my phone, I'm usually there on the Discord. So if anybody ever wants to hop in and shoot the breeze, all three of us, we're there all the time.
Brooks, what's the website?
There you go.
I mean, I basically the biggest thing I could self promo would be that I stream on Twitch, which is I'm easy to find. It's where's my name? It's right down there. Nate Graves. That's where I am everywhere. So hey, if you want to
play a lot of
hang
RPGs.
out. Yeah, if you want to hang out with a guy who plays a lot of like 20-plus-year-old games,
Fantasy Star 4, woo!
Yeah, I just recently played through Racing Lagoon. Actually, you know what? That is something I want to shout out. Yeah, dude, Hilltop Works, support Hilltop Works. They just recently put out a fan translation for Racing Lagoon, which is an old PlayStation RPG from 1999 by SquareSoft. That is car racing. It's a car PG, and it's friggin' excellent. And he's actually working on translating a couple of new projects. When I say new projects, I mean also old PlayStation games. But that'd be I don't know. That's my big shout out.
Yeah, and of course I'm Brooks. We're all together, Creaky Lantern Games, creakylantern.com. Like Jesse said, we've got a Discord. And yeah, we're working on more stuff. I've always got more projects, but some people would say that it would be stupid not to follow up Street Cleaner at this point. So that might be what's coming up.
Yeah. It's I mean, I don't know how much inside baseball, but I mean, there's always ideas and stuff, and I have love and affection for every little project that gets started, but not every project follows through to fruition and stuff. I know that we were messing around with a Spy Hunter type game for a while, which was kind of like a shmup in a way, but you're on a auto scroll road, and then we were Glory Gunner, obviously, is our Harriet Fortune Glory Gunner is something that we have a playable demo of. I mean, at least amongst us, and there's pictures of that and stuff. And I know that eventually we're gonna have something from that. But
yeah,
as far as like what we're working on this minute, it would be not wise to do something other than a Street Cleaner sequel. So.
Well, I like the little hint there, and if I'm quoting you correctly, it's better to just drop the project than to announce it a whole bunch. That's something that Brooks said last time.
Yeah.
So we'll go with that one. But yeah, I just want to say thank you everybody for coming on here. I'm going to drop all those links down in the description so people can check you guys out. If you haven't played Street Cleaner, the video game yet, I don't know what the hell you're waiting for. You should just go buy it and play it because it's super fun and it's on like everything basically at this point. So do that. And then if you like what we're doing here at Indie Arcade Wave, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, peace.